where the problem is that when people start having expectations about other people, right? But when it comes to just pure energetics, and why I asked is like, what did you want in that situation? So when you said Hallmark moment, because specifically, I think we're all of these things and we're all blends of these things, right? But where it becomes critical is when we're talking about sex, right? So if the caveman came home with these gifts and, the mastodon that he killed or whatever.
Right.
Because he wanted to get laid, now we're talking about a whole different story. For me, anyway. The rest of it is
it's probably the caveman figured that would be incoming
that's why
as
I'm
a part
asking.
of the Hallmark moment. He didn't just want the Hallmark moment.
I don't think so.
He wanted the heroic return.
Yes.
And he wanted, he was thinking that this was going to make a big impression, and something else happened.
Yes.
Right. So maybe the caveman should have just said, wow, I'm getting yelled at. Okay.
Well,
so we're going to be extending the challenge of the trip a little bit. And maybe if he could have just, I don't know, because I watched this other podcast, maybe he should have been like, oh, well, she's not that happy with the furs, but maybe it's not that. Maybe I'll just let her say what she needs to say.
Well, we did talk about that on the previous podcast,
right?
That you did. So that is a really good way to realize that what's going on doesn't have anything to do with you. But you brought up an interesting point that I like talking about, because we've been talking about the masculine a lot.
Right.
And I don't want guys who are watching this to think, why are we always picking on the masculine? But these are the questions that you're asking.
We're always picking on the masculine. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's absolutely not true, because there's a responsibility for, the lunar yin energy in that situation too. Both partners should be mindful of what the other person is going through. Now, do we get into situations where we lose our shit and we forget about it? Absolutely, right? But in that case, you brought up something that I like to use for, you have some confusions about what is the, going on through her head right now. But also, I think the other point of view, from the cave woman point of view, the one, is that when your partner comes home, right, the more solar partner comes home with whatever it is they've brought home, as part of that disconnect, right, of the world outside. And the reason why I say it happens with both people is because the way society is, both people in a partnership tend to have jobs, and most jobs require you to operate in a lot of masculine energy. So it's extremely likely, you're using a kind of an old-fashioned dynamic, but it's extremely likely that both people come home in this very solar-focused state, and they don't have space for the other person too, right? And again, you can do whatever you want. I mean, we have both of those energies, right? So recognizing where your partner is at is really good, but that's probably a little more advanced training. So in order to keep it simple, we'll just assume in the relationship that there's somebody who's primarily solar, yang, and there's somebody who's primarily yin and lunar, okay? In that case, the responsibility of the lunar, and then we'll go to the responsibility of the solar, so people don't think I'm always picking on guys. But I've been interviewing a lot of masculine energy people, and they always want to know. But to take a pause, and don't take it personally, but to look at your partner as the wounded warrior. And this can work for both, right? So, and that's why I said in a lot of partnerships today, you have two people who are having to be in their solar energy a lot during the day, focused, with work. A lot of people's jobs require that, unless you're, maybe a dancer or a florist or an artist like me.
Right.
Right. So I tend to, with my music and my art, and I tend to reside in that realm. It's a little bit easier for me. But to realize that when you're coming home, that you're in this very highly solarized state, and you're a little bit wounded, right? And to be understanding of that, right? So the one person has to, I mean, both people have to really open themselves up to their partners. And this is why on a different podcast that I did with someone else recently, talking about that ability to disconnect, right? And for you specifically in this situation, it's you wanted the recognition of, look what I did, right? This is very dangerous for the solar person, right? Because you end up setting a situation up where you're going to be disappointed because you have set up such high expectations about the reward that you're going to get. And also, energetically, sexually, why this is problematic is because it turns you into a little boy looking for mommy's approval. This is
very
this
sexy.
will
Wow.
This will kill the sex
That'll light
vibe
that'll light
away.
the fire.
Look what I did, mommy. Bringing home your homework and expecting appreciation. So this is why I wanted to bring up the lunar first, because this sounds like I'm, bashing masculine people. And it's not that. But this particular thing, not everybody operates from that. And that's why it's important, because there's two different energies that you can do. You can be bringing this home because you want to get rewarded. You want recognition. Probably depends on your love language, how that works. But sexually, that it could actually work in your favor, right? It could work in your favor. The reason why is because those things, for the lunar energy, those things can represent a bit of security, right? So when we're talking about personality in the particular situation that you brought up, and how that's the problems of interpersonal relationships. But from a tantric perspective, Tantra really doesn't care. do you know what I mean?
I understand.
It's because the lunar doesn't want peace. It doesn't want. It's totally okay.